Hey everyone! Great to be back with you all again. It's been awesome seeing people finally able to play Klonoa 1 and 2 now that the Fantasy Reverie series collection has come out. I always felt this series deserved a bigger spotlight in the US, and this release was a great first step to making that happen. Not everyone remembers this now, but 1 and 2 weren't the only Klonoa games to hit the US. That's right, on top of the PS1 and PS2 originals, we also received 2 spin-off games on the Game Boy Advance. Did they manage to capture the spirit of the original games? And how does it fare today? Sit tight, and we'll see just how well Klonoa, Empire of Dreams for the Game Boy Advance holds up today. Developed by Now Production, published by Namco Bandai, and released in 2001 for the Game Boy Advance, Klonoa Empire of Dreams is a 2D side-scroller action and platforming game, serving as a spin-off to the 2 mainline Klonoa games for the PS1 and PS2. In this entry, Klonoa and his friend Hupo wake up to find themselves in a land called the Empire of Gilius. Almost immediately, the two are apprehended by the Emperor's royal guard. Upon reaching Emperor Gilius, he explains that by dreaming, the two of them have broken the law. When Klonoa tries to find out why dreaming is considered a criminal offense in this land, we learn that the Emperor has been suffering from insomnia and has been unable to dream himself. He presents Klonoa with an ultimatum: to defeat 4 monsters who've been terrorizing the land in exchange for his freedom. From this point, Klonoa and Hupo embark on a quest to defeat the 4 monsters and attempt to save the kingdom itself. Hideo Yoshizawa would return as producer on Empire of Dreams, stating in interviews that his goal was to focus more on the puzzle elements of the game more than the action of the 2 console entries this time around, and that definitely holds true here. Like in the originals, Klonoa can move left and right, jump, and grab and throw numerous enemies and objects. Aside from a few small changes in the physics, this essentially feels just like the other games in terms of how you move around each stage and what you do to complete them. The game has a total of 40 stages, spread across 5 worlds holding 8 stages in each, including a boss fight waiting at the end of each world. There are also 3 bonus stages, simply known as EX levels, which we'll touch on more later. In those 5 worlds, 5 of the 8 stages are your standard levels, with multiple enemies, puzzle solving, ability to backtrack, and items like keys, crystals, and stars, the latter of which you can collect up to 3 of per stage. After collecting all 3 stars, a door opens and the stage ends. These levels follow the basic structure of the original Klonoa games, and make up the majority of the time you'll be spending in this one. Aside from these, each world has a stage where Klonoa rides a board while trying to dodge obstacles and collect crystals. There's also a stage where the screen moves automatically. Here, Klonoa has to quickly navigate the screen while fighting off enemies and collecting crystals again before reaching the end. And on a basic level, all of this works great. As I said in previous Klonoa game reviews, the brilliance of this gameplay setup lies in its simplicity. Despite Klonoa having the same basic controls throughout the entire game, the enemy patterns, environments, and level design manage to keep things fresh and interesting throughout. Some of my favorite obstacles involve having to grab enemies to jump with them and reach new places, only to have to grab said enemy again right after they respawn in order to reach the next platform. There's a level of satisfaction that comes with each completed stage that just never gets old to me. One small addition to the gameplay, which never existed in the originals, are these boxes, which you can throw without fear of breaking, stack on top of other boxes, or even block air currents if the stage calls for it. The boss fights, aside from the final 2, are not particularly difficult, with patterns that are easy to follow and work around. While nothing spectacular or particularly creative, they do serve as a nice alternative from the other stages, and do a good job of making you feel like you really are reaching the end of each world. I also appreciated the way the game's camera would zoom in and out during the boss fights, especially during the final battle, as it really helped increase the tension in those final moments. Well done. So, that's a lot of nice things going for it. Are there any negatives here? Well, yes, there are. While I wouldn't call any of these issues deal breakers, I did find myself stopping to notice some of these all the same. The first is the most noticeable, but probably the most forgivable as well. The game is not in 2.5D. One of the things that made the two mainline games so iconic to people, aside from their great storytelling of course, was its 2.5D style, incorporating two-dimensional movement across 3D planes and backgrounds. Here, all of the backgrounds are two-dimensional with parallax scrolling. Now, this is of course understandable. The Game Boy Advance, as wonderful as it is, was only capable of so much, and there was likely no reasonable way to place that here, from a graphical perspective. Thankfully, this doesn't affect the gameplay in any significant way, so the game still manages to feel like Klonoa, even if it doesn't always look like it. People who never played the originals are less likely to see what the big deal is here, and more power to them for it. The game's visuals still manage to hold up fine on their own, despite me feeling left out by the disappearance of the 2.5D look. The next issue to talk about is the game's music. It is quite simply not very good. While a lot of it is rehashed from titles past, it doesn't seem to work as well here. You're likely to hear from a small selection of music, usually accompanied by some horned instruments, played on a continuous loop until you've beaten the stage. Your mileage may vary, but I couldn't stand listening to most of it for more than a few minutes before wanting to turn the sound down. The sound effects themselves were fine, however. This next one may apply more to those who have played the original games, but if you did, you may find the story of this game to be severely lacking in comparison. All of the heartfelt or emotional moments that made the stories of the first game so memorable is all but gone here. Instead, the plot merely serves as a tool to get you from point A to point B and so forth. The snowboarding stages, while an awesome idea, get bogged down by the fact that you move so fast, there's barely any time to react to enemies or obstacles unless you already know they're coming. This also makes getting all of the crystals in those stages an extreme chore, even more so than the stages with the automatically scrolling backgrounds. If I never have to see stage 5-4 again, it will be too soon. Now, does this mean that the game deserves a negative rating? No, I don't believe so. It all depends on where you place your expectations with this one. The most important factor of each game in this series is its gameplay, challenge, and level design. And I'm happy to say that's exactly where the game shines. Excluding the snowboard stages, there's a large amount of puzzle-solving elements to be had, with some creative solutions to boot, especially as you get to the ones in the final world. And I believe the difficulty is just right. The puzzle solutions, while thought-provoking, never feel too hard to grasp, nor did it cause me to think about consulting a walkthrough at any point. That said, they were at least difficult enough that I had to often stop and think about what I was going to try next, before eventually getting it right. Not hard enough for you? Try collecting 100% of the crystals in all of the stages and see how difficult this game can actually get. And speaking of difficulty, the game has 3 bonus stages, also known as EX stages. Beating the game will grant you the first, completing every stage will give you the second, and getting every crystal in every stage will grant you the third. These are easily the most difficult and thought-provoking stages of the entire game. While you don't really get anything for completing them outside of this cute little congratulations message, I felt accomplished enough just for beating them, and found them to be a nice little bonus to increase the replay value just a little bit more. The boss fights, while short and simple, were still a lot of fun, and the last 2 battles definitely caused me to lose a few lives in the process. And honestly, it was still a lot of fun to go through. Once I changed my expectations of this game from a follow-up to the other Klonoa games, to a set of puzzle-focused stages with the same gameplay style, or even something more along the lines of an expansion pack, I started to enjoy myself a lot more. Once you get past the fact that this is not quote-unquote Klonoa 3, you start to see that there's still a lot to appreciate. I think there's still plenty going on here to make Empire of Dreams worth checking out. While removing the 2.5D graphics and deeper storytelling methods was a bit of a bummer, this is still essentially more Klonoa at its core, and I don't consider that to be a bad thing. Focusing more on puzzles actually works in the game's favor here, and the balanced difficulty leaves platforming fans with plenty of things to make it worth the trip. Just be sure to level those expectations a little, okay? And that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have you played this game before yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're feeling generous, please consider supporting my Patreon, where awesome people like Brandon, CLO, Erica, and Jedi Dude all help to keep this channel going. Stay tuned for next time, where we'll cover the other GBA Klonoa game, Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament. Until next time.